Are you struggling to create an intentional headspace? Unable to connect deeper with yourself? Come, and together, let's address the elephant in the room. I'm your host, Sinead Roche, and this is the Uncomfortable Podcast. So, something about me that I've always known it, but I didn't realize how much it bled into every aspect of my life, is the fact that I like to be in charge. Like to be in charge is not it. I have this need to have to be in charge of most things in my life. And I can see myself, I see this aspect of myself, oftentimes, in group projects, I always try to be the project leader. And even if there's another leader, that was, elected already beforehand, I tend to then micromanage a bit, which I'm not proud of. And I think the reason why I'm, addressing this topic today is because I have seen my need to be in charge and my need to be in control, escape me and cross different boundaries where, I don't need to have control and where I shouldn't be having control. And I think that's another reason why, I want to talk about this, because, I've had a moment, not recently, but, I realized, over my birthday, a few of my close friends, they had prepared, a surprise birthday for me. And my need to control it got so in the way that I ruined it completely. I ruined the surprise of it because I kept saying, hey, I want to know. And then when they told me, what did this dickhead do? I freaking corrected everything. And I wanted to change every single aspect of it. Not every single aspect, but I kept trying to modify it because I just couldn't fucking let it go. I need to go back and rewatch that episode of Letting Go. But I just couldn't let go of my control of it because in my mind, I was okay, this is for me. So I need to know what's happening, when everything is happening. And it ended up I pissed off two people. And even during the thing, I was okay, but this is not exactly what I wanted. And but I was having actually a really good time, but my need to control it got in the way. And I think, this has a lot to do with many different things, but, and we'll get into why does this need to be in control? Why does it impact them more than others? And why do other people just have healthy, ideas of control? But I think especially for me, just looking back at even my childhood, one thing that I've noticed is that I've always been in charge. Especially when it comes to my schedule, I've been in charge of okay, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And if I want to do this and do that, then I have to communicate to my parents, especially to my mom at that point, hey, I need to be picked up here and here. Thank you. I just realized I've always kind of had this strong grasp on my life, but recently and not even recently, I think after certain events in my life, it ran loose, my need. So yeah, kind of talk about that. Let's get into it. But before we do that, just quickly, I'm not here to talk about what it's like to be on the receiving end right now of someone who has control issues. I'm not going to say someone who is necessarily controlling, because there's a difference between having controlling personality versus having just controlling behavior, which obviously can always also tie and cross over to one another, but that's not what my main focus is. And I also think when I don't want to also address the entire thing of being in a controlling relationship, because that's another topic on its own. And those are most likely abusive situations, with a lot of psychological manipulation. Doesn't even have to be physical manipulation in any sense, but that's just a different topic. And today I just want to address how this need to control has led me to hinder my flexibility when it comes to adapting to different situations. And I'm not just now realizing it, but like I'm just seeing how it impacts so many different things where it's like I didn't need to have this feeling, or I didn't need to feel entitled to have this type of control at this moment, you know. And I know just like going down the future, like there are just some things like I can't control, like, and I need to be okay with that, and I need to be more flexible with that, because I think that's an entire, also like, not the entire thing behind like the Uncomfortable podcast, but just like it's a huge point. Becoming flexible is a huge factor, like when it comes to, you know, even like I believe like emotional intelligence, and just like situational awareness. And I can't have flexibility if I'm so fucking focused on having control. So that's what I want to talk about, you know. But if we get into like unhealthy versions of control, what is healthy control and how do we know people are exercising that? And this is why, like, I would even think someone who doesn't know me well with, and I mean well, because I also got trust issues, so I don't let people come that close. So fuck. Yeah, but someone who is looking from the outside, from a different point of view, they might think that I have like a lot of like control over my life, because of routine. And healthy people exercise like control over things that they can control, which is mostly like their life. That doesn't mean that does not mean their feelings, and sometimes that doesn't mean their thoughts, but it means their behavior in that sense. And people exercise this amount of control because they're trying to create stability, safety, and order. You know, and for myself personally, I have routines. People would, I've had many friends who tell me like, you know, like they can't find me sometimes because it's like I have like this schedule, and that schedule. And for me, that's just like a way of like, you know, exercising control, especially like in a healthy way where like I know that if I'm doing this, and doing that, and I'm being intentional about it, then it's going to get me somewhere, hopefully, you know, down the line, such and such. But it starts to become this unhealthy control when it starts to infringe on other people and their rights and their well-being. When your outbursts are extreme, when you start to give, and you're going to start to realize like, even for yourself, that you're not someone who's necessarily okay with losing control. When your outbursts to those things, like in those situations where it's just like, fuck, you know, they're extreme. And like for me, for instance, like I start giving silent treatment when I can't control certain things, especially like in relationships. That's like another telltale sign. Then there's like dominating conversations can also be another thing where it's like, okay, you know, chill, relax. I think there's a difference though between like mediating or like guiding conversations. But there's dominating conversations. Micromanaging, manipulating others, feeling that people owe you things, like information on certain aspects of their life. For instance, like, hey, where are you all the time? Relax. And then lastly, and you have like this unwillingness to adapt to new circumstances. And although for myself, like I have definitely silent treatment, I try not to do that as much anymore because like what I start to do, and this is why I love being in the digital age, is that even if I don't want to talk to a person, I do end up texting the person like, hey, this is what I like, you know, trying to communicate at least like, hey, I'm sorry right now, just like I don't have it within me, don't have the emotional capacity within me to talk right now, you know, just at least clarify, because like, you know, just going stone cold silent is also like such a dick move, especially like when you care about the people. What else do I do where I know like I just lose my shit? I think when change is something that I can't control with certain things, then I start to grasp onto the last bit of the last thing where I do have control. So if there's some situations where I'm like, I don't like the situations going on, if I can control one single aspect, I do see myself normally like reaching towards it and like being like, okay, but like I can still control this part. Like, and I think for some reason it allows me to feel safe, but like that's not healthy. Like, that's not how we're gonna, move along with this. And I think we'll get into that, like, how we're gonna actually move along from this need for complete control. Because also one thing I've seen, especially for myself, is just like I'm also really exhausted when I have these outbursts and when I feel out of control, and especially in places where like I had no control to begin with, and it's like this false sense of control that I had. Like I feel so exhausted. It's so draining. Like I don't want to do it anymore. But yeah. And then another thing where I feel like I really could see myself being considered a control freak is just like, I don't like to adapt to change. I don't like to adapt to new circumstances. I'm not as open as I wish I was. I do think I'm getting better, but it's gonna take a bit. It's gonna take a bit, and that's okay. But anyways, moving on. Let's talk about like what are some of the reasons now certain people might feel prone to like are prone to having this like these unhealthy boundaries when it comes to like what they think they can control. Some of this might include like low self-esteem, past traumatic experiences, especially like when someone has controlled you in the past or micromanaged you in the past, and now like it's like this thing of, you can't really trust other people to, have control of certain things. It could also be like you have a need for power or to feel above others. Trust issues, fear of loss of control, and anxiety. And obviously there's other reasons, and there's many sub reasons between those. For myself personally, like I've realized that my control issues are also linked to my trust issues. I think, especially when I've let people get really close to me and then they've ended up hurting me, I'm just like, okay, I'm not doing this shit again. And it feels like it doesn't matter how open I try to be, like, or conscious, like I try to be of things, I do end up just like, I'm very on the defensive mode, because I feel like just like the more times it keeps happening, the more you think like, it doesn't seem like I can really trust anyone. So like, I'd rather control things, and I'd rather control how far you'd get close to me. But I feel like this is diverging right quick into trust issues, which will be another topic. But back to the point at hand, there's just many different reasons as to why you might feel like you need to have such a tight grip on things. And maybe in the past also, like you've seen yourself out of control, and it's just been like really unpleasant sight to see. Yeah. But there's a difference between having like these, like I said before, like these control behavioral issues, versus like having a controlling personality and not being aware of the fact that like you're like this. I think that's a big point, like when you're not aware of it and you're not trying to change it, and you think like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. The fact that this isn't going my way, like that means something's wrong with it, and not wrong with me is okay. But like wrong with me is not the right terminology, because that doesn't impact, that is not reflecting on me, like you're not taking that moment and being like, oh shit, do you even have the right to be acting like this? And some of these controlling personalities, which I'm not going to go into because I have all of the information that I put in every episode in my blog. You can go and read more about the different personality types and personality disorders. Would include like obsessive compulsive personality disorder, paranoid, narcissistic, antisocial, borderline personality disorder. And with these types of personality, controlling personalities and these mental health conditions, it's really important to seek professional help. I think right now I'm talking about being more conscious of it. And I don't think like when you have the specific disorders and when you're diagnosed with them, I don't think necessarily just becoming 100% aware is going to help you, especially just through a podcast. There's professional help for a reason. But yeah, feel free to check those examples out. But yeah, back to having controlling behavior. Like, I think if you're listening to this episode and you haven't come to the Uncomfortable podcast before, then you're here for a reason, to become more flexible. And that means like reassessing where you feel like you have the right to, because I feel like sometimes I don't know, but like it's, where do you have the right to dominate, or like where do you have the right to have control? And I often, not often enough, I often try to reflect like, hey, is this something where this really concerns me? Is this something where I can change anything? And if not, then that might not be like a place where I'm supposed to be exerting any type of control, or I'm not supposed to be taking any charge. It might just be showing me that like, hey, like your boundaries aren't strong enough, like even to protect like other people from sometimes yourself, and you're not even protecting yourself from this situation impacting you so largely, So how can we reassess and redraw our boundaries with control, especially like when you think like you've been thinking in the past, like everything is going to go your way? We do this by asking ourselves and questioning ourselves and having that self-doubt. So I was looking online for different, questions to ask yourselves. And some of my ones that I found were like, okay, like what can't you control, but what can you control in those situations? Because I think that helps you to kind of make like not a pros and cons list, but just like show you like, okay, I can't control such and such and such, but I might feel like this, but I can only act on this and this, helps you to kind of, I think, disentangle your emotions and disentangle your reactions to certain things, so that you understand like where you're justified. And then you can also understand like, hey, I might feel this emotion, but that doesn't mean right now, like it's not my right. I don't have a right here to control something. So you can't control, let's get into the list. You can't control what other people do, but you can control whether you participate in their behavior or you enable them. You can't control how people see you, but you can control how you show up in your relationships and how you see yourself. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control how you internalize and how you respond to their treatment. You can't control your thoughts and feelings, but you can control whether you attach to them, identify with them, or act on them. You can't control the things that have already happened, but you can control what you do in the present. Sorry, I just cited this one because this is one I need to really focus on. And you can't control the outcome of anything you do. There's just sometimes just like a lot of different factors that also go into that. But you can control your efforts. And right now, not right now, but like, I think at the point where I am in my life, I am constantly sometimes like asking myself those points like, hey, like what can I fix, and what can I just have to let go and accept that this is happening, and I think I'm someone who likes to reflect on the past, but I also have to be present and also know that like I can't control what's happened there. I can only control what's happening now, and hopefully I'm not reflecting what has happened in the past. But yeah, asking yourself these questions and like reflecting in times like where you feel like you've lost control, like I feel like that does help you to reassess whether or not like there was any control that you had over the situation to begin with. And then you start to like be able to like assess, hey, these are the actions that I can actually be taking that would help me better, like, and they don't necessarily go around like controlling other people and infringing upon other people, because that's also really important. And once again, this has to do with like boundaries, like where are the limits in that sense as well. And I think another point like where like we start to, another point where we start to feel like we should have had control over something, but like we don't actually, like that happens when like you're not focusing on your actions. And I feel like that happens a lot when you're focusing on other people's actions. And again, that's not something you can control. And it's hard to accept that sometimes. But also think about sometimes the feeling that comes with that, where that feeling when you can't control what someone else is doing, it's like, sometimes it feels like it's too much, you know, and when it feels like it's too much, that means like it's not, like you can't do anything about it. Like all you can do is control your action. You can't control their action. Moving over, let's talk about how we can become more flexible in that sense, and become, I don't know, I guess like more open-minded, because I wouldn't say that's necessarily like the opposite of control, but being more open to alternatives happening and things not going your way. I think that is, the place where we're trying to go, and being okay even when things don't go your way. That's what we're trying to get. So that entails learning to become psychologically flexible. Some aspects of this include being willing to feel difficult emotions, stepping back from your own thoughts, focusing on the present, living by your own values, and only living like by your own values for yourself, in the sense that like you're not forcing other people to live for your values, because you can't control that. And building habits based on your values. And these kind of like thought processes and going into them a bit deeper, like they target certain aspects of openness, awareness, and engagement. And I think just overall more reflection. And if you're someone who, like you've just started to realize like how much your lack of boundaries, like with control, infringes upon others, and also makes it just harder for you to continue to be happy, or to like to continue to live. And then it's time to just, take a deep breath and reflect a bit, like on, are you open enough in these situations? Like, are you being aware of like what you do, what you can change and what you can't change? Like, how are you engaging afterwards? What's your reaction to these types of things? So it's a lot about like reflection, because again, the more you reflect, also like the more you're going to understand, hey, why did I even react like this? Why did I feel like I had control sometimes when I didn't have control about it? And also it's kind of coming to that realization that like, hey, it's okay that I don't have control with this, because I think oftentimes, you're always going to be in situations where things just don't go your way. And there's going to be definitely situations that you've had in the past where things have just not gone your way, but they've also ended up okay afterwards. And so like sometimes even just looking at those moments and remembering how like, oh my gosh, I wanted to control them so badly, but I didn't. And in the end, they still turned out being okay. I think that also helps us to like, we'd be like, oh, this is going to be one of those times again. Even if you haven't, just gone through all the motions of becoming open, aware, and engaging like in healthy manners with others and with yourself. Like sometimes just looking at others' times and being like, shit, it wasn't that bad actually, like also allows you to like breathe and feel like, sometimes your way is not the only way, and it might not sometimes even be the best way. And there's other ways. But this again all comes with time, comes with patience, and lots of reflecting. And it's something I continue to do, like, because I said in the beginning, like, I would consider myself to be someone who has control freak tendencies. And I think sometimes, like, they're really, it's not that bad. Like, when it comes to project management, as long as I'm not micromanaging people and getting in their way, then I think it's okay. It's okay as long, again, as I am asking these people. But when it gets to the point where it's just like, bro, I had no right, then it's just like taking a step back and being like, okay, I know this is not good for myself. This is also probably not good for other people, the way I am reacting or responding right now. So maybe like, let me reassess my boundaries right now, like with myself, and how much I'm allowing myself to engage in certain situations, like with certain responses, So yeah, I think this is like a lot of reflection with that. And if you feel like right now you're doing okay in this type of aspect, maybe go back to another time where it's just been like, oh, reflect maybe why did that happen? What's the root cause of it? Low self-esteem, anxiety, other things as well might be more specific naturally. And ask yourself the question, are you exercising control healthily? So like in manners in regards to like your routine or, actually like routine is right now the only example I have in my head, but like, are you exercising it healthily and only controlling like what you can do, or is the need to dominate and to control, is it crossing its own boundaries? Because that's then when you have to reassess your boundaries with things and reassess how you communicate to other people, like with that, and how much you allow yourself also to, I guess, impact other people, because your need to control, like at one point, like I said, I didn't realize how many aspects of my life it impacted, but I'm slowly starting to see like if I don't reflect more on it, like it can ruin many different things. So yeah, take that time to reflect and say like, are you exercising control healthily or is it crossing boundaries? Thank you guys so much for listening. Hey guys, thank you so much for supporting this week's episode of The Uncomfortable Podcast. Make sure to tune in every Monday for a new episode on Spotify and YouTube, and go check out our TikTok and Instagram for more content.